Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back. If you don't know me, my name is Catherine, and if you do know me, hi. I'm so grateful that you could make it here or make it back from wherever it is on the internet that you happen to drop in from. So honestly guys, I had no plans to make this video. I honestly don't know if it's going to make it out of the draft, but perhaps that uncertainty is precisely why it should. I don't know. We will have to see. You guys, I had a significant portion of my life where I made myself like deliberately invisible to the opposite sex. And to clarify exactly what I mean by that, because I'm realizing post-editing that is quite something to say in the beginning of a video without qualification, you should know that in trying to do this, okay, emphasis on trying, that all just meant minimizing any aesthetic property distinctly feminine about my appearance, right? Women wear makeup for different reasons. A lot of them will insist that they do it for themselves. I think that's true. I think that a lot of women just want to beautify themselves. But my point is, you cannot deny that any cosmetic preference that refines the feminine contours of the face, accentuates the volumized presence of lashes or increases some form of color prominence in the lips and the cheeks. It doesn't always have to be like the color red. Brightens the skin, sharpens contrast around the eyes, or just otherwise exaggerates sexually dimorphic features. Like those actions, those aesthetic preferences, that inevitably increases your perceptibility, okay? You cannot deny that certain aesthetic decisions that young girls make, that young women make, in whatever creative measure that they opt for, invites observance to that effort, right? You invite observance to that effort whether you intend to or not. And for girls especially, you will invite certain observance without even trying to do so. Human beings are extraordinarily sensitive to signals of beauty, of health, of vitality, symmetry, distinctiveness, aesthetic effort. We notice these things long before we consciously decide what we really think about them. We just, again, we are sensitive. We know they're there, and we know we notice them, but we don't always process through why we're noticing them. And so for me, at that age, invisibility across every attraction field just meant muting those signals as much as possible. And again, I want to re-emphasize the word tried. Like, I tried to do this, and obviously that was not very successful, because as we know, there are certain physical distinctions that reveal us to be who we are, regardless of whether we cooperate with them or not. There are features, there are proportions, there are expressions, there are temperaments, there are mannerisms that remain stubbornly visible regardless of our intentions. Human beings aren't blank canvases, okay? We arrive already carrying signatures of what is on the inside, And so what I learned is that visibility is not as voluntary as I imagined. You can tell yourself that you refuse to participate in certain forms of aesthetic amplification, but you can't get rid of yourself. I hope that makes sense. Continuing forward with the video. It wasn't, I can't even honestly say that it was because I believed attraction in and of itself was evil. It was certainly not because I considered myself above any, non-platonic dynamic I was exposed to. This is very exposing. It was actually because, you guys, I was frightened. It was because seeing how disfigured in identity my female friends became, and I didn't have many, you guys. I only had maybe two growing up, like between 11 and 20, specifically when given to aesthetic valuation as defined by others, and yes, especially men, I became terrified, okay? I didn't like what they became. I didn't like how unstable they became under the ire of the male sexual gaze. I watched people in general, as we all do at some point in our lives, become tragically, I think, psychologically colonized by the sexual gaze. And for me, I saw that, and I wanted no part of its consequences in my personal narrative. I think I had some degree of pride going on there. Okay, you know what? let's take all the accountability. You guys, I had a lot of pride. I had a lot of ego I still had to work through. I thought it made these people weaker to be stabilized or fragmented. In some cases, spiraling into competitive contempt over rejection, over admiration seen to be withheld or misdirected. I was obviously witnessing a phenomenon that the French philosopher I've spoken about many a time on this channel, René Girard, spent much of his life trying to explain. Human beings desire according to the desires of others. We learn what to value by observing what other people value, even when it doesn't entirely line up. I was so disturbed in seeing how severely disoriented my female friends were in their identity. I definitely did see the same on the side of my male friends. That is not at all, by the way, to say that I did not have the same experience, but on another dimension. I also went through it, but it just looks a little bit different. Anyway, like I said, what I saw scared me, and I made a very specific, calculated decision not to participate. I did this, you guys, very effectively until I was 20. I wish I were kidding, but I did. And yes, this was informed by other things, namely illness. It turns out that prolonged illness, which was my case throughout high school, and also depression, does, severely compromise your capacity for sexual attraction. I won't get too much into the personal details because that is obviously not the purpose of this video, but I'm telling you this because the point is, I thought it was more likely to make you psychologically weak and morally fragile than otherwise to be concerned in any significant measure with beauty. That is honestly just what I saw, and to be honest with you, it is most of what I see today. I mean, entire industries now survive by manufacturing insecurity, particularly through hyper concern for appearance and then selling temporary relief. You're not beautiful enough, right? Buy this. You are not desirable enough, okay? Become this. You are not valuable enough, perform this. You weren't enough. You are not enough. You might be enough, but remember, enough by our standards will cost you. And what fascinates me, you guys, is that these systems, they rarely require their victims to believe that they are ugly. They only require them to not remain entirely certain in what they are worth. Because as we know, certainty is economically catastrophic. A woman who truly knows her worth, she is incredibly difficult to manipulate. A man who is secure in his dignity, he is, on the same measure, incredibly difficult to exploit. Any individual wholly convinced of their intrinsic value is extraordinarily resistant to coercion, which is why I truly do believe that uncertainty in self-value is one of the most profitable commodities on earth. And so whenever conversations emerging around beautiful people, not realizing they are beautiful, or, let's be honest, pretending to not realize they are beautiful, I think, sorry, I'm already betraying what I actually think about this whole situation, but yeah, whenever these conversations tend to emerge, I think it's easy to reduce the issue to something burdened to projected pathologies of self-image, comparative attractiveness, comparative standards of beauty, when they apply, if they apply, why they may or may not apply in specific contexts. It becomes such a headache, you guys. That's why I didn't want to talk about this. But obviously that's not what I think beauty is. If you are familiar with my channel and what we tend to talk about, I think you'll know, you'll be well conscientized to my convictions about beauty. To summarize everything, I think beauty fundamentally is a question of defensible value. It's a perceptual issue, particularly when understood in the older sense. Previously, by the way, not as in previously, but previously, I'm saying that word so many times, but as in maybe three videos back, I spoke about beauty as defined through ancient cosmology and through Helen of Troy, the face that launched 1,000 ships. Beauty, according to Dostoevsky, saves the world not for its aesthetic consequence, right, but for the precise understanding that if beauty is more deeply understood as integrity, i.e. continuity and wholeness of character, no competing internal convictions, clashing expressions between internal and external priorities, then it makes full sense that civilizations launched thousands of ships toward it to defend it. Beauty in every moral fictional cosmology is the wholeness, the fairness, the integrity of spirit, i.e. the fairest of them all, worth defending, worth protecting. She is integrity. I mean, that word, literally that word integrity, it matters. The Latin word integer, that means whole, that means complete, that means In other words, that means that you can't be internally fragmented. That means you can't be a hypocrite. Beauty in the ancient times was not primarily understood, right, as aesthetic attractiveness. It was also understood as internal coherence, a coherence that expresses outward, and it's what happens when your internal world, your internal convictions, beliefs, values, right, sees their civil war. It is the absence of contradiction between conviction and conduct. That is what the maiden figure symbolizes. I mean, let's be honest, she symbolizes a lot of things, but that's not the subject of this video. In particular, the face that launches 1,000 ships has become shorthand for extraordinary physical attractiveness, but obviously the deeper principle I'm trying to illustrate here that we need to actually hold on to is that civilizations will collectively launch 1,000 ships, right, launch their sacrifices in the direction of what that polis, what that country, what that state deems worthy of defense, right? Deems worthy of protection. Beauty in every mythology worth remembering, I think, is not merely desired, it is defended. And that realization, you guys, changed something for me because it forced me to ask a difficult question, right? What does it mean? What does it do to not just any person, but yes, we can apply this to anyone, not just women, but obviously I'm a woman, so yeah, you know, my brain is operating on that experience, right? But yeah, what happens when a woman does not believe she is beautiful? Recall again how I said that civilizations launch ships towards, you know, whatever they feel is worth defending. I think we do that internally. Dostoevsky's observation has always sounded strange until one realizes that beauty is inseparable from value. Beauty saves because beauty teaches us what not to abandon. Because recognizing integrity, identifying coherence, you know, even if those harmonies in character are internal, that is profoundly important, especially when the implications of its absence, you know, the implications of its absence force us to contend with hollowness, with shallowness, not just a corruption of character, right, but a lack of character. Beauty teaches us what should not be sacrificed because the cost will leave you ethically barren and indefensible in more ways that we can trace out. This is important for women, and it's been incredibly transformative for me, because if you do not possess confidence in your own beauty, and I'm not speaking about the aesthetic, like external expression, no, I'm speaking about beauty in internal, those internal terms of character. If you don't have faith in that, if you don't have confidence in that, then you will struggle to defend it when, like Helen, it is compromised, it is stolen, it is manipulated, or it is attacked. There are times in your life where you may have to encounter that property being stripped for parts by people who have no business touching it, and you have to learn to defend yourself. You actually have to build some kind of cognitive resolve in your innocence, in your defensibility. And perhaps this is the deeper tragedy burdened to so many contemporary conversations surrounding self-worth. You know, people often assume that having confidence in yourself, as in physically, is primarily about feeling good. It's not. You know, my conviction is that confidence is primarily a defensive faculty. It determines what you believe to be worth protecting, worth defending. Civilizations don't launch ships towards what they believe is disposable. No kingdom mobilizes its armies to defend what it regards as worthless, okay? And your mind is a kingdom. Protection follows value, right? Defense follows conviction. To reiterate, we mirror this exercise internally. If you do not believe there is something precious within you, right? Something dignified within you, something beautiful in the older and the more profound sense of the word sitting inside of you, you know, worth defending, worth preserving, then truly every assault against your worth will feel reasonable. It will actually feel deserved. Every compromise will feel negotiable, right? Every violation, however seemingly insignificant, will feel survivable. Every humiliation, like I said, you come up against will begin to feel deserved, because you literally, you don't possess any confidence in what sits inside of you. You literally can't defend yourself. That is why I think it is important to know, not even just necessarily for women, that you are beautiful. And remember, I'm not speaking about the external sense of, the external the external implications of beauty. I'm speaking about internal wholeness, integrity, and coherence of character. It's all about how you choose to work out your own values. But beauty, properly understood, teaches a person that there are certain integrities, there are certain consistencies in character that should not be disposable. Beauty is the absence of contradiction between what one says in their heart and what one actually expresses. It is the difficult and often painful achievement of becoming one person instead of like several competing selves, and it takes time. You know, it takes humility, it takes repentance, it takes you to get to a point where you realize that the pain you keep hidden will not only affect you. Integrity takes time, it takes suffering, it takes healing. And the thing is, most people living in active internal fracture, they know that they are fractured. They know full well when their public performance exceeds their private security. They know when the external image has become completely detached from the internal reality. They are hyper aware of how and where and why their motivations have become more self-serving than genuinely sacrificial. When ego, when vanity, insecurity, resentment, or appetite have become the authors of their behavior. And I think it is precisely because they know it that there is something strangely unconvincing in the way they defend themselves. The explanations feel manufactured. The self-justifications feel in some way incomplete. The expression feels slightly disconnected from reality. And it like what that actually means, it's different for every person, but there's always just something off. I can't precisely put a pin on it, but it's almost like, yeah, it's almost like the audience can tell that the figure, that like the celebrity or whoever it is not fully with us. And it's so hard because speaking like fully from my own experiences, I've been on the other end of that. To some extent in certain portions of my life, I am on the other end of that. It's like you are in a reality believing things contained in that reality that the rest of the world is not conscious to. And so there's this cognitive disconnect. You know what I'm saying?
My experience being the uglier person in my relationship is so funny, and
I'm so tired. Get the fuck up. Get up.
This generation is so beyond cooked.
That is why I find the conversation surrounding Brooke Monk so interesting. Not because I care particularly whether or not she is objectively more attractive or less attractive than her boyfriend. That is not the point. The point is there seemed to be, in my opinion, and that is if she was being genuinely sincere and not seeing herself as attractive as her boyfriend. Anyway, there seemed to be a remarkable ease with which she accepted the inferior position, obviously within that comparison. I mean, what perplexed me honestly was not the comparison judgment itself, but the absence of resistance to it. Because whether or not the statement was true was ultimately, irrelevant. It's about what the statement, rather what response to the statement reveals about the speaker. For many women, men as well, the deepest insecurity is not necessarily they find themselves physically unattractive. It is that, in my opinion, they are unconvinced of their own defensibility. They are uncertain as to whether there is anything sitting within themselves that is worth protecting when challenged, when criticized, abandoned, replaced, humiliated, compared, and your existential opinion of yourself matters to God enormously when your disposability is questioned. Because every human being will at some point in their lives confront moments where they are made to feel where they're made to confront the reality with certain people that, hey, you may be replaceable, you may be rejected, you may be betrayed, you may be compared, and not everybody has the luxury of like an army rallying around you to defend your interiority. If you don't have confidence in that interiority, you're gone. Because defending yourself is literally a matter of who comes to the front lines. And if you can't even drag yourself there, what seriously, I don't even know how else to put it. How are you going to survive in this life?
I do still think she's the more attractive one.
This is the bullshit that I'm talking about, bro. If the whole thing was about them saying, bro, damn, bro, she looked too good for you, bro, why is she with you, bro? You would have never made this video. But as soon as they're talking about her looks, you came on here to say you think she looks better than him. Are you really being serious here, bro?
People like you are the reason why women feel like they have to conform to all of these beauty standards, bro. Why can't she be the funnier one in a relationship if she's not the better looking one? Why can't she be the smarter one? Why does she always have to be the prettier one? If women's looks are always called into question, when will they ever be something that's not their looks? Then she goes on to say that the men who talked about the girl's looks in a negative way are virgins. Great comeback, bro. She's liking comments insinuating that they're gay because they might want him. That's why they think he looks better than her, because they want him. While I do agree that the BP and looks maxing communities are a very slippery slope, I find it very ironic that you're upholding the same things that they stand for themselves. I just think it's very ironic.
And in those urgent moments, what determines survival is not an issue of external validation, or how many people can rally behind you and defend your name. No, it's an issue of internal conviction. Have you ever met those people who you know are innocent? You know, like something has been wronged. Well, they've been wronged by some party, and you start to defend them, and then they look at you like you're the enemy. Like, I'm trying to help you. I'm like, you believe in them, in their innocence, in their value more than they do, and it's like, what world are you living in? It's like, it's frustrating, but I think more so it's sad. So many people don't believe that there is anything in them worth remaining faithful to, you know? And for me, learning that I was, well, not chopped, I guess, was not fundamentally an exercise in self-esteem. The exercise in stewardship for my internal qualities has become so much more important, because it's removed the fear. It's removed that like crippling paralysis of being confronted with the idea that, hey, I may be everything to somebody aesthetically, appearance wise, and then the next day I may be like chopped liver, literally. It required for me cultivating the qualities that will actually preserve me, that I know, because you guys, I'm a Christian, and when God says that he values certain things, it becomes my personal interest to acquire those things: faithfulness, humility, consistency in character, patience, gentleness, courage, self-control, the fruits of the spirit. And I'm not saying that, you guys, I have all of them, I definitely don't, but my priorities have shifted, and I feel so much more secure in what I'm stewarding. I think that for centuries there has existed this romantic notion that the most beautiful woman is the woman who does not know that she's beautiful, and I suspect that this is part of what many people find so endearing about Brooke Monk. If that is, her obliviousness is sincere, it creates this impression of humility, of innocence, and obviously innocence has always been attractive. What fascinates me, however, is how quickly that admiration turns into an attempt to quote-unquote humble. Certain portions of the internet call her quote-unquote chopped. They exaggerate flaws, especially so when she is barefaced, that are minimal or, quite frankly, do not exist. And let's not play games here, okay? Brooke Monk is stunning. She is beautiful, but she does wear a lot of heavy makeup in her videos. And I think that this sect of the internet tries to quote-unquote humble her, not because they genuinely find her unattractive, but because paradoxically they are trying to communicate the opposite, right? The insult in this strange way becomes a disordered compliment. Humility is strength under voluntary restraint, okay? A woman, like a beautiful woman, pretending she's not beautiful is not humble. A beautiful woman who knows what she possesses, how much she possesses, and refuses to weaponize it is actually humble. And that is not the same thing, which is why I think beauty seems to both save and cripple a woman, because beauty attracts attention attracts judgment, and somewhere along the way judgment will attract insecurity, and so then you find that insecurity eventually tempts a person to surrender authority of their own perceptual value to the opinions of strangers. And that was always my fear. Reflecting back on everything, now as an adult, I think that was what I was so paralyzed by. I was so afraid of handing somebody else the right to define what beauty was to me and how that impacted whether or not I saw myself as beautiful. I don't know, this this video may be more for me than for you guys, but yeah, I just wanted to sort of wrap all of those thoughts up. I hope it all makes sense. The deepest measure of beauty is not necessarily what people see when they look at you. I think it is what people become after they have been known by you. And obviously with a social media figure like Brooke Monk, there will be people who want to make it known that they don't find her attractive. And that is, hey, I guess, like for her, she has to have, I think as we all do, have to have that resolve to look at someone who expresses that and be like, okay, I'm sorry, like I can't do anything about it, you know. Anyways, usually I have a through line in these videos, right? I have like something to wrap everything up. Today, obviously, I don't. So that's the end of this video. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you very soon. Yeah, this was fun. This was interesting. I don't know if it'll go up. If it does, yeah, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, thank you so much for your ear, for your patience today. I hope to see you very soon. Otherwise, you take care and goodbye.